have a pleasure to run a webinar related to the recruitment process run in English. As quite usually, probably you meet it during the webinars at the very beginning, I would need some confirmation and information from you if I'm well heard and well visible. So please write on chat if everything works properly and you can hear and you can see as well. Then I will know it will be information from me that I'm not only talking to myself, but you can hear me. Okay, I see that there is confirmation that it works. Fantastic. I already started in English, so this is something what you can expect. It means that the whole webinar is going to be run in English. But of course, if it is going to happen that there will be any kind of phrase or word that you won't be sure about, or that might be a bit confusing, please let me know. Also, please write it on chat, and then I will give you the proper clarification. The reason why we organize these webinars is in fact connected with, I would even call it a combination. On one hand, it is about substantial knowledge connected with the area of HR, connected with the area of the recruitment. But of course, everything on the top of that is connected with English. And probably most of you know, we run different kind of English courses, and all of them are connected with the substantial knowledge of our trainers, and I'm just one of them. So I'm representing the company Couch English, and I'm in fact the owner of that company, running the courses connected mainly with HR, mainly with recruitment, because this is my area of specializations. So here we are going today to have a demo session, let's say, about the recruitment process in English. But in fact, if you are going to be interested, I can definitely invite you to the whole course, recruitment process in English, which is being run for around 4 months. And usually it works this way, that during that kind of course, we are getting to know a little bit more about all the typical phrases, constructions, words, questions, of course, that can be formed if we want to run interviews in English. And on the top of that is, in fact, our environment, I would say, our community, because whenever we are running any kind of courses, we meet only in the group of experts and specialists. So it means that if it is about recruitment process in English, you are going to meet in that course, in that process, only the people who have experience in the recruitment processes. So this is something very crucial, very important, because that's somehow like a cherry on the top. During the courses, then you can discuss, you can exchange different kind of experiences connected with running the recruitment processes. So during the course, we always have this kind of combination. On one hand, it's of course about English and the whole design of the process in English, but on the other hand, we always have some kind of, I would say, valuable, substantial conversation and discussion about different kind of challenges that we meet during the recruitment processes. And in fact, this is also how I would like to move with today's topic. So not only I will provide you information about some, for example, examples, sorry. So for advanced examples about different kind of questions which we can form in English when we want to interview and examine candidates. But we will talk also a little bit about the candidate journey, which is becoming lately very popular tool, in fact taken from marketing, taken from sales, connected with the fact that due to the reason that we work strongly in the employee market right now, we have to do a lot of things. We have to incorporate a lot of activities and actions connected with making the candidate experience definitely much easier. And this is why we are talking about the candidate journey. So first of all, we'll talk a little bit about candidate journey. Then we will move on to the design of the job advertisement. So here I will also I will provide you with certain phrases, structures, and words connected with designing the job advertisement. So what kind of words we can use for the purpose of the job advertisement. Then we're going to move to behavioral questions. So a little bit about construction of that form of the interview and of course how we can run it. And finally, a little bit about the competence interview. And for that purpose, I just decided to do it this way that we will have just samples, sorry, some samples of typical competences that can be applied for the purpose of the interview and examples of questions that we can ask. One of them will be connected with the stress resilience. I can see in the meantime some information from Dagmara that you can't see the recording and you can't hear anything. I guess it can be connected with the settings. So most probably, Dagmara, if you just open the option of settings and switch probably from one maybe microphone to another, from one speaker to another, it could work. So let me just write it. Course, anybody has contact with Dagmara, you can mention what I said. I hope it will work. It's usually about any kind of technical issues. Let me, from the very beginning, also invite you to be as active as possible. So if during the webinar you want to share any of your reflections, some kind of experiences, if you disagree with my opinion, please just share it, because I can admit that for me something what is much more valuable is not only the situation when I'm talking to myself to some extent, but when I can also find some interaction. So whenever you want to share some opinions and whenever you want to ask some question, please feel free to do that. And before I'm going to move to the topic of the journey, of the candidate journey, let me probably also share a few words about myself. I can, of course, see some of the names and surnames that I know. So I believe that for some of you, when I'm going to give you right now my short pitch, it will be something that you know from practice, or at least you will have the possibility to check if I'm a credible person or not. So do I usually say exactly the same things or not? But for those of you who don't know me, short introduction, so that you could see if it's valuable to spend with me the following hour or not. If it comes to my professional background, it is from the very beginning connected with human resources. I was mainly responsible for the soft areas of HR processes, but of course, HR administration was also in my scope. Among the other things, I was usually in charge of the recruitment processes, running them, I would say, on different kind of levels. So starting from very operational ones, because I was working among the others in the production companies. So running the processes for the positions of warehouse employees or production workers, it was something that I was doing on a daily basis. But of course, all the positions connected with experts, specialists, managers, middle managers, top management, together with financial directors or operational directors of the organizations, it was also something what belonged to me. I was usually doing the processes not only in the Polish market, but also internationally, because especially when I was working in my previous company, where I had the function of HR head, I was responsible for establishment of new divisions all over the world. So sometimes it even happened that I was just packing myself, taking the suitcases, pulling myself together, going, for example, to US, to India, to China, meeting there a complete greenfield, so nothing being there, and just starting initiating the recruitment processes from the scratch. And then, of course, all the levels of recruitments, it was something what I was doing. And apart from the fact that I'm responsible for HR area, being in fact right now consultant, I also run different kind of English courses, but always I have that kind of the rule. They are connected with my substantial knowledge, with my expertise, so that I could use not only English, but I could apply there also my working knowledge. And this is something what is very crucial for me, that I can share always my experiences, apart from the fact that it's about English as well. My preparation for English is connected with the fact that for the last, I would even say already 20 years, I have been teaching English. Mainly it's about the courses for adults. It's not about kids at all, in fact. And as I mentioned, it's about different kind of business courses and the ones which are connected with my specialist knowledge. So English for HR, for recruiters, for trainers, coaches, and few others. So that's about few words of introduction, and let's move on to the candidate journey. And as I was mentioning at the very beginning, this is something what I believe is lately becoming more and more popular when we talk about designing the sufficient, effective recruitment processes. And I have at least that kind of the approach that from time to time, it's really very, very, very valuable experience just to have a meeting in the set of people involved in the recruitment process, have some kind of discovery session, and meet for the purpose of designing the candidate journey. Candidate journey understood as the whole process from the moment when we are attracting the attention of the candidate, because probably there are some candidates who don't know our company, our positions, our employees, our recruiters and HR departments. So very often at the very beginning of this journey, what we have to do is just that we have to inform the world, we have to inform the candidates that we are there and we're right now doing the recruitment. So this is this initial moment when we start the whole recruitment process and attracting the candidates into the journey. And if I were to say about the final moment of the candidate journey, but please correct me if I'm wrong, I would probably say this is that moment when we have finally the candidate on board. So to some extent, we already have a transformation and not anymore candidate, but due to the also pre-boarding process, we have the new employee fully prepared, fully equipped to start the onboarding process. So that's how I would, of course, describe the candidate journey. But if you have any other definition, opinion about that, please let me know. As I was mentioning, I'm very, very open for any kind of opinions and information from you. You can, of course, write them in English, but if you prefer, Polish is also okay, especially that you can write it on chat. I would probably also say that if it is about this candidate journey, the reason why I mentioned that from time to time, it's really, really valuable just to meet at the table, have some kind of round table session with people involved in the process. For example, not only recruiters, of course, but maybe some of the new employees who have quite fresh experiences from the last recruitment processes. Definitely, it's about hiring managers or the clients, of course, who are participating in the recruitment process. Maybe somebody from the marketing department or employer branding who is together with us forming the process of recruitment. Then I believe it's really, really valuable because we can just sit together and decide what parts of the processes are working properly and what parts of the process probably could be to some extent improved. And I can see that there is again some kind of the problem connected with, I guess, hearing and seeing. Then I believe I would need to have information from some other of you just to check if it is like a single problem and Agnieszka and Dagmara have it, or do the others of you? Okay, Dagmara mentioned that finalize with settings. Monica is saying it's okay. Okay, so I will just repeat my message then to Agnieszka. Okay, great. Thank you for information. I'm always hoping that Click Meeting is the best for the webinars, but I guess there can be always some kind of a problem. Okay, in case of Dagmara, it was about recording. Okay, thank you very much, Dagmara, for that. So I hope Agnieszka will be able to manage that as well. As I was mentioning, it's about all these reflections that we can have when we're going to organize the brainstorming session or discovery session. And something what I would mention as probably very important point of the candidate journey, it's about defining all the possible touch points. So all the moments during which we can have contact with the candidate, just to see what we do properly, what we do effectively, but also to define, and there is a very nice English phrase for that, also to define the pain points. So some kind of weaknesses, some kind of bottlenecks that probably we also have, because I guess that each of us in our candidate journey could find that kind of moments. So to define these pain points, to know what is still not perfect in our recruitment process and what kind of space for the further improvement we can have. And this is the reason why I believe that we should, to some extent, from time to time, involve all the stakeholders participating in the recruitment process, because I guess that some of you could have that kind of experiences. You can be the best recruiters ever, you can be the most professional ever, but if you're not going to have proper cooperation, for example, with hiring managers, and they will be somewhere during the process probably delaying a little bit the process and not giving you the quick feedback, I guess candidate experience won't be positive. And this is the reason why I believe that we should, from time to time, just meet, talk about our pain points, our weaknesses, and together decide what can be still improved. I don't know what is your opinion, so of course, please share it if you can. But probably one of the indicators, of course, meaning metrics, which could be quite valuable if we're talking about the recruitment process and improving the candidate experience. It will be the NPS indicator, which of course again comes from marketing, comes from sales, and this is that kind of the indicator which is measuring, to some extent, of course, satisfaction of the candidate with the recruitment process. It's only about one question, of course. So normally, if we want to check satisfaction, we would have to be a little bit more elaborative in asking the questions. But one of them, which will be strictly connected with that particular indicator, it will be the question which we can see in the presentation. So how likely is it that you would recommend recruitment process to our company, to your friends and family? And I believe that if it happens that we're going to collect feedback from candidates, not even give feedback to candidates, but collect this feedback from them, then because of having this direct and very fresh information, what is okay, what could be probably improved, which is given by somebody who is the most important stakeholder in that process, so from the candidate, it could help us how to still improve the candidate journey. I can for sure share something that most of you probably, especially if you work in IT recruitment, know, um, which is connected, in fact, with the recent survey done by Fluff Jobs, connected with measuring the effectiveness of the recruitment process and, of course, feedbacks given by the candidates. And I can admit that when I was checking this survey and the results of it, I was quite surprised, because it occurred that in IT market in 2020, only 81% of the candidates, sorry, not only, 80% of the 81% of the candidates admitted that they didn't have the possibility to share their feedback to the recruiter or to the hiring manager. And I guess that normally, on the top of the whole candidate journey and the process, we would rather point one of the weaknesses, which is rather connected with delivering feedback to the candidate after rejection and after the recruitment process, which is, of course, still one of the pain points I believe that we have in the process. But if we think about feedback from a different or at least a bit different perspective. So not this typical downward feedback. And downward feedback, it would mean that this is the feedback given by the recruiter to the candidate or by hiring manager to the candidate. But if we think about so-called upward feedback, so the one which is given by candidate to the company, to the company which is organizing the recruitment process, if we can see that 81% of the candidates didn't even have this possibility to share this feedback, it means it is really something that we can work on. Even designing some, I would say, simple questionnaire and then collecting information from the candidates, I guess it could be something really valuable for the purpose of improving the process. And secondly, also that results from the fluff jobs, they showed that even though only 20% of candidates had the possibility to share the feedback, then still 80% of them said that there were no conclusions drawn from their no conclusions drawn from their observations. So even if the candidates are or were sharing some kind of feedback, sharing some kind of conclusions or recommendations for improvement, then again 80% of the companies didn't take any conclusion from that. So I believe that this is really a huge point for some further improvements in the whole process. When I was a bit more interested also in the recruitment process in US, I remember I was usually checking and comparing, in fact, to some extent, the Polish process and the American one. And lately, I was checking also this indicator, so this NPS indicator specific connected with candidate and recruitment process in terms of the companies which have the highest scores. Unfortunately, for now, I didn't find anything about Polish market. So maybe there is this CNPS about Polish market. If you know about it, please share it. But I don't have that kind of data. I just have information about the US market and the company which is said to be an expert, probably I can say, and really very successful in terms of the recruitment process and having very high scores in NPS process. This is the company which is called Input. NPS really on a very high level because it is the level of 64. So I would say really, really very high. Normally we have like 50%. It would be already quite high, I would say. So if they have so huge effects, then what is the reason why they achieve it? And in fact, nothing very spectacular, nothing really very awesome, I would even say. It's just about the fact that they are keeping the promises, so they don't pay lip service. If they promise they will be in touch, they do that. They usually make a decision about employment or rejection within 1 day. And sometimes they're also organizing some kind of feedback sessions with the candidates in a more, I would say, sophisticated way, because what they do is to organize the session, which we could call wine and dine. So it means that they are even personally meeting some chosen candidates who are willing, of course, to meet them, and then collecting the feedback. So I would say quite to some extent basic things, because it is only about transparency and credibility and the speed of the process, but automatically it impacts, of course, also the satisfaction of the candidates. And probably if we think about not only then satisfaction and the whole candidate journey, let me put on the top also the job advertisement. We can say job advertisement, job advert, job ad. All of these forms are possible. And probably I would also say here that if it is about the job advertisement, assuming, of course, that we are designing, crafting that and publishing somehow, it is to some extent the representation of the company, because the same as our website, for example, the same as in case of products, some kind of catalogs, then it works exactly again the same with the job advertisement. So the better we are going to design it, the more easy it is going to be for the candidate to catch all the important information. And by all, in fact, I mean crucial information. The better layout we are going to have, just to match to the eye tracking of the candidate, so that they could know where to have a look at, to know what is happening there in the job advertisement, then I believe that it is going to bring us also a lot of success. And for the purpose of job advertisement, I believe that I won't be giving you too much of information, of course, connected with design, because I'm sure that being an expert, you know that perfectly. So here, I just want us to concentrate on that typical phrases that we can use for the purpose of the job advertisement. Uh, Normally, during our courses, when we have a topic connected with the job advertisement, we are concentrated on designing it. So usually you're just coming to the course, bringing your own examples of some chosen job ads, usually in Polish, of course. And then what we do during the course is that we are translating parts or sentences of these job advertisements for the purpose of future processes, so that you could have some really, I would even say, tangible value from the process. Uh, During our today's webinar, we are going to concentrate on one of the aspects connected with the job advertisement. So I decided to choose something what is always visible on the top. So I decided to choose the header. And here, probably I could compare it to the CV of the candidates. So the same as normally we have the job profile of the candidate, which is rather attracting our attention. Exactly the same, I would say, works with the header. So whatever we are going to put there, the more attractive it is going to be, the more catchy it is going to be, then the bigger chances that the candidate will be willing to read the further part, more substantial part of the advertisement. Few phrases which can be used for the purpose of header, which is usually only about these very initial sentences, just something what is inviting the candidate to read the whole advertisement, as you can see, in fact, in presentation. So I decided that just to choose some typical sentences as we can have them in the job advertisement. One of them will be for our client specializing in, and then probably I would give some information about solutions, about the branch we are currently looking for. So I would say this is the most typical sentence, especially if we work in the agency, that we can use for the purpose of the job at design and header, of course. We could probably also write our brand new division is awaiting you. Brand new means that it is a greenfield. The company, the division didn't exist there in the past. So this is just some kind of new challenge, new opportunity that people can participate in. I can, instead of the phrase brand new division, also use the phrase greenfield. It is the phrase which is quite typical if we are talking about some international company which is not present in given location. So let's say that I have headquarters somewhere there in US, and there is a decision of headquarters to open a new division in Poland. So then I can call this new division in Poland Greenfield, like a completely brand new, the one which is just being built from the scratch, from nothing. There is in English one more phrase which is to some extent connected with that greenfield, and that would be brownfield. The difference will be connected with the fact that I would say quite often in the 90s, especially when we became more, or maybe in the 20s even, when we became more open for international cooperation, and that was of course possible, then it was happening that some international companies, they were taking over the existing business in Poland, and sometimes this business was not so profitable. Maybe it was even in the red. If it was in the red, it didn't bring profits. There is even that idiom for that, in the red. So this brownfields would mean that international company is taking over some existing business, which is at the risk of bankruptcy, not having too modern, I would say, equipment, machinery, and processes. And of course, they are then redesigning after this takeover the organization. If I'm then talking about greenfield, I can say, as a greenfield, we are currently in the process of building a team of senior recruiters, for example. If I want in that header probably, or maybe somewhere a little bit below, add few things already about the position for which I'm recruiting the candidates, I can say SN, and then of course I would provide some information about position. So as an accountant, you will act as the key point of act like you will be. I can also say the main goal or the main objective of that position embraces, and then of course I'm talking about the main goal. The phrase embrace is in the mid meaning of take cares. So the main goal of that position embraces take care. It will be to some extent, of course, synonym, but the word embrace is a little bit more sophisticated and advanced, especially for the purpose of the advertisement. And another phrase which I could use, the overall objective of this role is to contribute to. This word which you can see here, contribute, is also quite typical for the process of recruitment if we want to ask questions. Synonym to that word probably would be input. And if I wanted to form any question with that word contribute, I could probably say, how do you think you will contribute to the team? Or what will be your contribution to the team? So what will be your input? What will you deliver? How the team is going to benefit if you're going to cooperate with us. So quite, I would say, catchy phrase to use in the recruitment process, contribute. And from the header, before we are going also to move to behavioral and competence interview, let me also mention a bit about persona. So I guess this is something not even strictly connected with English, but again, rather with the recruitment process. And again, if you wish, please share your opinions, please share your reflections about that. So first of all, if it is about the persona, I believe this is like the perfect vision of the candidate who we would like to find. And I would even probably say that the word perfect can be understood however we wish, because perfect can be at the same time imperfect candidate. So this is just the vision of the candidate whom we would like to employ, whom we would like to recruit. And I guess that the main, at least in my opinion, of course, the main reason why sometimes we are deciding to craft the persona, it's connected with the fact that we want to know who is our target group, what are the characteristics of our candidates, the ones that we want to find, and where this target group can be found, so that we would know what and how to communicate to our candidates. But of course, when we are thinking about the persona, I believe that especially um, at that very initial stage, if it is at the stage of the job design, it can be a little bit tricky also to design this persona, because I would say that it might happen that what is going to appear during this design of the persona, it will be some kind of bias. Bias means like prejudice, so some kind of conviction or some kind of stereotype that we're going to have. So if I know that I want to start some recruitment process and I will have in my mind some certain position, some certain scope of responsibilities, and probably some kind of competences which are connected with that particular position, I most probably can start thinking about some representative of the candidate that I would like to employ. And I would say that what can happen here, if I mentioned about this even unconscious bias, or maybe even the conscious one, in fact, is that if I have in my head this proper, improper candidate, I can start thinking that maybe this is the candidate who is at the certain age, because I'm looking for the person to IT, let's say for the position of architect or developer, and I will have in my mind that I'm looking for the person who is around 30 years old. And in fact, if I do that, probably it's already, first of all, a bit of discrimination. And secondly, I will have in my mind this bias. So unfortunately, it might happen that when I start thinking this way, okay, I need the candidate who is around 30, then if I start thinking about the point of contacts, so all the channels which I can use just to find my candidate, I will limit myself maybe only to social media. And in reality, if I want to design the persona, I would say that here I have to be very open for any kind of alternative solutions, any kind of alternative candidates, just to make sure that I'm not going to focus only on, I would call it stereotypical candidate. To some extent, I would even say that it is connected a bit with our Polish market, which is luckily changing lately. But for many years, we had that kind of, I would even call them convictions. That, for example, if somebody started job in one profession, then there was that kind of requirement, expectation that this person is going to follow that given profession for the whole life. And I can even imagine that when I started doing the processes in US, at the very beginning, even for me, although I thought about myself that I was quite open, and I had this out of the box thinking, but then I guess it occurred I didn't. But what was at the very beginning quite surprising for me was the fact that it was quite typical, not even like exceptions, but it was really quite typical that when I was collecting the CVs, the resumes of the candidates for different kind of positions, quite often there were people who had a few years of experience, for example, in finance, then a few years of experience, for example, in marketing, and then few years of experience in different kind of business area. And at the beginning, it was quite surprising for me because it wasn't typical in the Polish market. But in US, it was something completely natural and something completely normal, the same as the trend which we started touching in the Polish market within the last 2 years during pandemic, so-called big quit, which is connected with the situation that if employees are leaving the organizations without having a new job, it is called big quit. And I would say that still in the Polish market, it is not yet so popular. I would, on the top, of course, put the financial and, yeah, let's say the financial aspect. But in US, it was something completely normal and natural. So having the candidate who worked for 2 years in one company, that then this candidate had, for example, 6 months of the gap, then again, it was something quite typical and natural. And probably if few years earlier I could see that kind of CV of the candidate in the Polish market. So first of all, the person who is changing the profession, who is requalifying to a completely different discipline, to a completely different branch and again profession, somebody who has these gaps and being to some extent a job hopper, so the person who is changing the job quite frequently, probably my first thought several years ago would be, okay, I guess this is not the perfect candidate and he doesn't belong to my persona. And this is again the reason for me that it's on one hand really valuable to design personas from time to time, just to have some kind of imagination and to know how to design the message, how to talk to the candidate who is somewhere there in the cloud. But on the other hand, we have to be very conscious and very careful here not to use any kind of stereotypes and again, not to use any kind of bias. Still, if we're talking about the job advertisement, this time a bit from strictly English, so some typical phrases that can be applied for the purpose of job advertisement. Some of them, I guess, they will be quite typical and natural because we just use them on a daily basis whenever we want to craft the job advertisement in English. So probably if I wanted to relate to education of the candidate, one of the very typical phrases would be the word degree. So if I want to have the candidate with a specific educational background, I can say that I'm looking for the candidate who could be the who could have the degree in finance or related field. So probably if it is something about accounting or maybe any other position, and sorry, not position, any other discipline, any other specialization which is connected with finance, I can say that I'm looking for the candidate with a degree in finance or related fields. In case of experience, I believe something quite typical that probably you know, it will be the phrase 3+ years working experience in accounting. The word working is quite often used somewhere there in the area of job advertisement to show that we need somebody who has real practical knowledge and real practical experience. So if I have somebody who is just after the university and most probably doesn't have this practical expertise, then that would be not somebody who has this working knowledge. So working knowledge, it's about practical aspect. And quite often we are also using not only the phrase experience, which you can find here, but also expertise with a slight difference. Because when I'm talking about experience, I'm rather talking about the seniority. So I'm just concentrated on having 5, 10, 15 years of experience. And on the top, I would put this tenure. So only the seniority. But if I'm going to talk about expertise, then it means that I'm really concentrated on finding the candidates who are experts in the field. So expertise and experience, it's a bit different. If I'm talking about soft skills, I can just call them, I can just name them that I'm looking for somebody who has leadership skills, or I can use the phrase that I'm looking for somebody with strong focus on quality. So the phrase focus will be also here quite, I would say, popular. Lately, the phrase which is very attractive, maybe I could say, and I guess it's because of the fact that we are working in that agile mindset, is also the same phrase. So if I'm going to use somewhere here talking about the candidate's features, features meaning of course qualities or skills, if I'm going to use there somewhere the phrase mindset, it will be something typical for the purpose of the advertisement. And some other words which are lately very popular, it's for example the phrase geek. So if I want to find somebody who is really passionate about something and who is crazy about something, then I can use that phrase geek. If I'm going to use the word passionate, let's say for the purpose of the job interview, if I'm forming some kind of the question, I can ask the candidate, can you tell me what you're passionate about? Can you tell me what you're passionate about? In fact, the formal construction of questions, it's a bit, I would say, tricky also if we're recruiters, is that if I have two questions in one, like, can you tell me? The second question should be reframed a bit to affirmative sentence. So, can you tell me? And normally, the second part of the question would be, what are you passionate about? And here I have to reverse it. That's why I'm saying, can you tell me what you are passionate about? That's about grammar, but of course, let's say that nobody is going to kill us if we're not going to use the proper one. Just being practical, not crazy about that. I'm just mentioning that, but in reality, it's of course still okay if we're going to not have this reverse version. Another phrase which will be quite typical for the purpose of the job advertisement, it will be drive. So I'm looking for somebody who has drive for till mindset. And this mindset, which I mentioned earlier, is applied here as well. I need a sip of water. And some other phrases that are going to be quite attractive for the purpose of the job advertisements. I can say that I'm looking for somebody who has experience in purchasing or similar role, or somebody who has background related to something. I can say related to, I can say connected with, let's say the same meaning. Related to for the purpose of advertisement sounds a bit better, let's say. And generally, the word background is very popular for the purpose of recruitment. So if I'm going to ask the candidate, can you share a bit about your professional background, then probably it will be the same question as, can you tell me something about yourself? So can you share something about your professional background? Let's say that if I have quite intelligent candidate, or the one who is like a bit ironic, probably if I just ask the question, can you tell me about your background, they can talk about that kind of background. So if I'm going to say, can you tell me a bit about your professional background, let's say that could be a bit more proper one. I already mentioned the phrase degree, so I'm looking for somebody who has degree in, and then I'm going to give some specialization, or equivalent. So equivalent, like similar type of specialization and education. Proven experience. This is something very typical, especially when we are looking for candidates to sales, because we really want to know that they are not only working, but they also achieve their targets. So proven experience, the one that somebody can prove. So they really achieve their targets. In fact, they won't just bring you probably some tables and reports, but we write it because it sounds also quite attractive. And exactly the same, but in a bit different form, I can also say that I'm looking for candidates who have proven record in sales, but the meaning will be, of course, the same, that they can somehow show and justify during the meeting and interview that they have this practical experience. The word approach definitely will be very popular. So I can say that I'm looking for somebody who has accountable approach. There is also in English, or even rather, I would say maybe in HR, the difference between talking about accountability and responsibility. So if any of you is responsible for competency management, and you're responsible for designing different kind of competencies and describing them, then the one which in Polish would sound like odpowiedzialność, we formally should call it in English accountability. I know that from the translation, if we say responsibility, accountability, it's exactly the same, but due to the fact that in English, if I say I'm responsible for recruitment process, it just means that I have it in the list of my tasks. That's why, as a competence, as my approach, I will rather talk about accountability. So designing competency matrix, for example, we need to use accountability, not responsibility. Uh, just one thing which I will add to that is also liability. Financial responsibility, it's liability. The word which is as a verb, sorry, also quite popular for the purpose of job advertisement, it will be the phrase demonstrate. So I'm looking for the candidate who demonstrates high level of something. Demonstrates meaning just have it, or show. I mentioned about this phrase passionate about, but I can also write somewhere in the bullet points that I'm looking for somebody who has passion for something. So I'm passionate about something, but I have passion for something. I hope I will manage till the end. I'm sorry, but for me, talking for the whole hour during the webinar, it's a little bit challenging to have all the time my voice on the high level. And probably something else, I can use the phrase strong or solid. It will be exactly in the same meaning, understanding of business processes. So especially if we're talking about, for example, the position of HR business partner, then probably I would write, I need somebody who has solid understanding of business processes. And almost the same meaning, like understanding and knowledge, it will be the phrase acumen or savvy. So I need somebody with financial acumen, financial savvy, like understanding and knowledge. So for HR business partner, I guess I would use that phrase as well. Something from the perspective of competences, or maybe rather approach, I can write that I'm looking for somebody who is committed like this person is very engaged in their work. So somebody who is committed or demonstrates commitment, has computer proficiency. Probably I wouldn't, of course, write that one. Rather, some kind of systems would be mentioned, but everything what is connected with these computer skills can be called with proficiency. Languages, rather with the word command. So I'm looking somebody with high level of English command. And the word which is also quite nicely heard if it is about combination, sound knowledge of something, like good knowledge of something, but sound versus good, I guess that this one sounds a bit better. So that's from the perspective of the job advertisement. And let me right now move just to some samples of behavioral interview question, which I believe is among the two of them, so behavioral and competence interview, probably still a little bit more popular, I would say, or at least again, this is my opinion. So if I want to ask any questions connected with the behavioral interview, so something referred to the past experiences of the candidates, I can probably even start forming the question with the phrase, can you recall? And here it's important to know that phrase, recall, because sometimes if we want to translate something directly from Polish, we would use the word remind. But there is a difference, because if I'm asking my candidate, can you bring to your mind, can you dig in your mind and find some information, then recall will be much more proper. But for example, if I'm scheduling the meeting with somebody, then I would ask this person, can you remind me tomorrow that we are going to have this meeting? So remind, rather like put effort, so that somebody could remember about something, and recall, bring to mind. So for the purpose of recruitment, if I want to ask any kind of question connected with behavioral interview, it will be a bit more proper to use that beginning. So can you recall the last conflict situation you faced? Uh, the verb face is also very popular because quite often we're asking the candidates about challenges, achievements, successes, and so on. And then exactly the same. I can ask the candidate what was the biggest challenge or what was the latest, not to ask so sophisticated questions or so top questions. I can ask them what was the latest challenge that you faced. Faced like met. Probably, if I wanted to go a little bit more deeper in that question with conflict, I could ask, can you provide some background to that event? How about some latest challenge you overcame? So you managed to be successful in that challenge? Or would you exemplify any of successes attained? Instead of all the time saying, can you give me the example? Can you give me the example? Can you give me the example? These are the other possibilities. So can you recall? Would you exemplify? Not to repeat all the time the beginning of the sentence. Can you give me the example? Which is of course perfectly okay, but we can have some alternative. And I guess one more for the very end of our today's meeting, it will be about stress resilience. So some questions connected with competency-based interview. I can say stress resilience or resistance. Both of them are okay if we want to check if how somebody is managing stressful situations. And probably some examples of questions here. Could you describe a recent situation in which you were put under pressure? What kind of stressful situations would you prefer to avoid at work, so you are not willing to meet them? Or what kind of situations might seem stressful for you at work? So just some examples of them. questions that you could meet, in fact. What I was mentioning today, so a bit even about this candidate journey and designing of the whole process connected with the recruitment. Uh, a bit, of course, part like a short sample of these phrases and structures and constructions connected with job advertisement, and some samples of the questions for the purpose of behavioral interview and this competency based. This is something what, as I was mentioning also at the very beginning, you can meet during our course, English for Recruiters. The course, which is going to be the first one, in fact, after some short break, it will be run in September. So if you wish, of course, I can definitely invite you to participate in that course. And normally what is happening during that kind of courses, it's not only about getting to know all these questions, phrases and structures, but it's also about having practical simulations. And I would say that this is the biggest value of this course, that we are meeting in the group of recruiters. And quite often, one of you is going to be in the role of recruiter, the second person is in the role of the candidate, and we are working with questions. So on one hand, I'm always delivering you the ready set of questions. We're also designing the questions during the classes because you know your processes, so you know what kind of questions you normally ask. But then we just apply whatever we get to know into the practice. That's why we have this practical simulations in which you can feel like during the real interview, but of course in safe and comfortable atmosphere. If you are interested in that course, please write to us. You have here the email address, contact Couch English Chapelle. So contact us if you wish, if you want, of course, and we will gladly answer any kind of questions that you have. In fact, not only if it is about recruitment, but also some other courses if you feel like during the nearest 2 months. So in fact, in May and in June, we're going to organize some kind of short courses to be also prepared for vacation and respect the fact that we all need to rest as well. So the courses that we want to organize from May, it will be some mini business English course concentrated mainly on different kind of processes in business and the general one. And due to the fact that both of these courses, they are designed for 2 months, it works this way that they are both really tailor-made. So we are just giving you the set of the topics that you can choose from. And then normally it also works this way that when we start running the course, you are telling us what kind of topics are interesting for you. And for the purpose of these short courses, we are just delivering that topics that you are concentrated on. There is a question: do you have any sales for recruiters from Ukraine? Olga, if you could clarify a bit more, because I'm not sure if I understand the question. You mean sales for recruiters? If you could just clarify, because I would answer, but I can't yet. So I'm not sure if you mean the course for recruiters from Ukraine, or you mean the different one, something different. So if you could clarify, then of course I will respond. Generally, if it is about the discourse English for recruiters, it is fully run in English. So even all the materials that you are going to get, all the vocabulary presentations, they're 100% in English. So it also means that usually when we are participating in that courses, you will find there are people not only from Poland, but also, of course, other recruiters as well. As you were, Olga, also writing about sales, we have one of the, in fact, it is not course, but it is a training about recruitment marketing. So this is something rather from the perspective of using the language of benefits, of designing attractive and interesting advertisements. So it is another one that we have. But I'm not sure if it is answering your question. So if not, then please let me know. And some other courses that we are going to have in May and June. This is about building self-confidence. We are going to talk a little bit about also writing emails, so it will be a separate one. Business grammar, but let's say practical one, and please believe me, practical one, because I'm not in favor of academic one. If there is any teacher, probably they would kill me, but I really have that kind of approach that grammar rules, yes, but let them be practical, the ones which are used by people from US, and maybe not from US, but let's say from UK. So this part is as practical as possible, and two short courses connected with HR. So one will be connected with reporting the performance and indicators of HR. So during that course, we're talking, for example, about all the typical indicators, like how to show the headcount or the budget to our stakeholders. And the last one that we are going to start, it will be about presentations, but this topic is strictly again connected with HR. So how we can practice our presentation skills in English for the purpose of delivering HR presentations. So only the part connected with, again, HR environment. And I believe that this is how, of course, I wanted to finish that substantial part and the part connected with a little bit of information of the courses. So if you have any other questions, some kind of comments, please let me know. And of course, as Camila is right now giving you here, you have the information about our websites. All the possible courses which we have are available there. So I will just wait a moment if there are any new questions popping up. I can definitely invite you also to the other webinars, because once per month we are always organizing webinars, not only connected with HR, but different kind of topics, I would say. So sometimes they are dedicated to trainers, sometimes to coaches. So different kind of topics, of course, everything run in English. We will be also sharing this presentation with you. So I believe that within the next few days, Camila will share with you presentation. So if you still want to refer to any of these phrases that I was mentioning, you will have this possibility, because it is just there. I believe that I will wait probably 2 more minutes. If still there are any kind of questions or comments, you can of course share with me if you like that or not, because that's also something very, very valuable for me. It's a bit different if I can see you than I see the reactions. If I don't, I have no idea how it is. Thank you very much. I appreciate the comments. Thank you, Małgosia. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much, Dagmara, Olga. So, my dears, if I see there are no more questions, let me say it was very, very nice to run this webinar. I would love to say it was very nice to see you and hear you, but I can't say that. So I'm glad that you were also responding, and I hope to meet you in the further webinars.